With Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out, depending on what side of the proverbial coin you are on, this game has gotten a lot of hate. Either you hate the game due to the DEI stuff, or you're happy to finally have an Assassin's Creed set in Japan. Which got me thinking, a lot of games have come out over the years that were unfairly judged or hated, so here's my analysis of some of the best games that didn't deserve all the hate. You know what else doesn't deserve hate? That like button. So go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see when I drop other videos like this. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So I'm going to make this sort of like a light-hearted sandwich, which I'd say is probably much better than a Jill sandwich from Resident Evil franchise. Am I right, guys? Guys?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Well, I guess this is the best place for us to start with the original Resident Evil. We all know that the voice acting in the first RE game was at best cringe, and it wasn't the only time in Resident Evil's history that we had cringe of this level. I mean, 5 had the motherfucking boulder punching Chris Redfield. And we don't even talk about the insanity that was 6. However, we can't forget that not only was RE considered one of the games that almost single-handedly changed the survivor horror genre, but it also helped with the massive revitalization that happened around the zombie genre in general at this time. Going from the progenitor, see what I did there? Alright guys, I'll fucking quit. Of a multi-billion-dollar franchise to the start of a trend that has annoyed gamers from its inception, we have the infamous horse armor debacle. If you don't know, then well, I'm too damn old at this point. But the game Oblivion is considered by a large sector of the Elder Scrolls community to be one of the top 3, if not the best, in the franchise, with its biggest contenders being Morrowind and Skyrim. However, there is a massive stain that mars its perfect perception, and the fact that many blame the game for the introduction of microtransactions in video games. This sin has brought down the overall glory that the game had due to the introduction of the now asinine horse armor, for I believe like $2.99 back then. No one talks about how companies were trying to monetize their products more and more at that point anyway. The hate built up so much to the point that skit channels on YouTube and even worst gaming lists put Oblivion on just for the inclusion of the horse armor, and they say very little about the storytelling and game mechanics anymore. But the game was great when it came out, and it continues to be to this day. Microtransaction became a blight on the gaming industry and has been a darkness that the gaming community has not been able to shake. And Dark Souls 2 being the worst game in the Souls trilogy is something that it has not been able to outlive. Even to this day, it gets dog-walked, and even though I can understand some of the hate that the game got, my dumb ass went through my first playthrough with a dexterity build, and that hurt my opinion of the game a bit as well. The things FromSoft added to the game to make it feel different from Dark Souls 1, the power stancing and new location, added to the lore of Dark Souls universe way more than Dark Souls 3's retrending of ground already covered in Dark Souls 1. This alone made the world seem so much bigger, like we had more to explore than we got in the first 2 games. And I mean, how is the wanting of more ever something that you can equate to a bad game? Now onto a game that people didn't explore very deeply at all before deciding that it should be hated, in Black Myth: Wukong. Last year, before the game even released, it got hit in the culture war that the US is still going through, with issues like Gamergate hate and political messaging. This forced me to buy the game and see if it was a good game or not. Click the link in the top right corner for that review. Like I said in that video, half the people who were looking at it loved it due to it not bowing to the woke crowd, and the woke crowd hated it due to it not having enough representation, saying things like there are no women or people of color in this game. However, you don't have to go far in the game before you run into a really cool ass dragon boss that happens to be female. And not even an hour later in the game, you can run into an entire village of females, proving that if you actually play games through before hating on them, that they can surprise you or even be on the level of the greatest that that year has to offer. talking about games that have the potential to reach Game of the Year status, we have Monster Hunter Wilds. The gameplay is fun, and while I myself can personally give a list of issues that I have with the game, its repetitive nature is exactly what a Monster Hunter fan comes to these games for. However, if you were to read any games journalist articles on the game, it's bad because of things like, if you make your character look like a female and it sounds like a dude, the game doesn't register that you want to be called sir, and other things that don't really actually need to be in games to make them entertaining in the slightest. It seems like a lot of people forget that gaming is meant to be an escape from the world, and if you have 15 to 45 minutes to blow to escape from reality into a game, Monster Hunter can give you the perfect escape. You know what we couldn't escape? For all of those of us who are asked to play any Souls-like game due to it being on our channel, well, that's the hate that Stellar Blade got. Do you know the reason why this game got hate? Leave a comment down below with your answer. I'll wait to give you a second. Done? Let's find out if you got it right. So was it gameplay? Story? Graphics? No, it was none of these things. Its loudest critics got mad at the game due to the fact that the protagonist was, let me check my notes real quick, that's right, too goddamn hot. They threatened the creators of the game, saying things like, have you ever seen a real woman? Go touch grass. Look at these guys not knowing what real women look like. Well, in less time than it takes to Google the model that was used, her husband and lead designer of the game pointed out that he was married to this real woman. The egg was all over the haters' faces after this information came to light, and I'll tell you, the actual story and gameplay are not that bad with this game either. We are finally through the darker parts of this video, so let's move on to a game that is hated by two completely separate and opposite groups with Elden Ring. This is the only game I have ever seen that can get the same amount of hate from both fans of the franchise and newcomers alike. You might be asking, if you don't follow Souls games, why was Elden Ring hated? Didn't it win Game of the Year? Yes, it did, and here's my confusion. It was both hated for being too hard and for being too easy at the same time. Channels like the Act Man on YouTube made a killing on hot takes and memes that spawned from Elden Ring in videos they made on the topic. And it also caused one of the dumbest controversies known to gaming. I'd go down that rabbit hole, but several YouTubers' careers were on the line when this game came out. I think 3 years after the game came out, it's still being played, and the community is still strong enough to prove that those who thought it was too hard got better, and those who thought it was too easy beat it and moved on, which is fair. But in the end, the game doesn't deserve the hate it got all around. With only 3 games left to go, guys, I forgot to mention I have a members section, so go ahead and join that so you can get videos early. Have you ever heard of a game that was so hated, but still managed to somehow pull a sequel out of its ass? Where the only thing that was removed from the original was the one thing that made it hated in the first place? What game are we talking about? Well, that would be Final Fantasy X. And the amount of hate the protagonist was given for being too cocky in his own game. I mean, after all, even though the whole journey was about defeating Sen and getting Yuna the final summon, the story was his story. The part that seems to have kneecapped Tidus the most, though, was this dumb laugh scene that made people cringe so hard that Tidus disappeared until the true ending of Final Fantasy X2. But honestly, out of all the skill/magic systems that Final Fantasy has ever had, I'd say that the wheel was in the top 3. The combat was more Final Fantasy, and the graphics were sweet for the time being. And in the end, like I said, even though Tidus was removed from the sequel, they still got a sequel. Speaking of endings, our last 2 games are due to their endings. The first of these being Mass Effect 3 and its choice of 3-color ending. Many felt that all of their choices across the 3 games should amount to more than just a choice of red, blue, or green. And while I agree it was not as grand of an ending that they could have got, we did have one hell of a journey leading up to this point, didn't we? I haven't brought up other games in any of these franchises yet on this list, but not only did we go through games to stop Saren, the Geth, the Collectors, the Elusive Man, and the Reapers with the 3rd game, we also set up relationships, learned about a massive galaxy from its minerals to its grand cosmic beings, and pretty much lived a life in this world. I simply ask, should all of the awesome adventures that a lot of us had in this game be marred by one misstep in the legacy of this franchise? To this day, I still hear about this particular mess up and how due to the end, it ruined everyone's experience with these legendary titles. Oddly, however, last but not least on this list is the game that made me want to make the video in the first fucking place. And forgive me for this bit of a rant, but what the hell did Halo 2's ending do to so many channels here on YouTube to garnish it being on every list of worst endings in gaming that I've ever seen? I mean, I would understand if the second game had not sold more than the first, if the campaign wasn't awesome, if the multiplayer had not been enhanced to the point that it was one of the most polished multiplayers for the next 5 years, but because the game ended on a cliffhanger, journos and top 10 lists all over the internet shit on the ending like it was someone who developed Concord. It's not like we didn't get Halo 3 just 3 years later. I get some hate towards it at the time. You know what? No, I don't even, if they even had just a book or a comic to finish the story, that cliffhanger should be considered one of the best endings in gaming history. That is badass, just like the character that spoke the line, and I'm willing to die on this hill. Something I'm not willing to let die is my love for all of you that come to my channel and watch my content. Thank you all for coming back over and over to see what I put out, with a special thanks to my members. At the Tarnished level, we still have B Walker 8732 and B Sand. At the Demigod level, we've got the legendary Super Kermit, Philip Guerrero, Batsy, Amanda Hammond, Thrak, Nightmare Boy 109, Thrones of Games, Jonas Ribeiro, Bats, Battle Chicken 12, King Baby Seal III, Total Original Studios, Augur, Wolf the Bearer of the Chosen Unkindled Tarnished, Cream of the Crop, Plim, Syrup Galaxy, Dappin of Dodd, Neon Prime, Diaz Gaming, Wizard of Strategy, and Mike Hammond. And last but certainly not least, we've got the Elden Lord level with, Noah, like always. Thank you, Noah. And I hope everyone has a wonderful time. With the world being as hectic as it is, be good to each other, be good motherfuckers, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.